ready to hear from another. And like, her dad happens to be pastor's pastor. Y'all be on your good behavior. So they don't tell on us. You're getting ready to hear just an incredible young woman. I have seen the transformation, and I am so proud of her. She just stands in her own self, in her own right. She's an author, she's a mother. How many of y'all have heard of the book Lost and Found? Yeah. She's just incredible. And I stand in awe of God when I see how He has developed her and made her into the incredible woman that she is. We are so honored, and I am so excited, and I know that you are too, to have the opportunity to have Miss Sarah Jakes here with us. Watch this.
Sarah Jakes is a take-charge businesswoman, writer, and media personality who expertly balances career, ministry, and family. She regularly pens a blog, sarahjakes.com, dealing with issues such as love, life, and family. In Lost and Found, Sarah shares her story with a rarely seen transparency. There's a saying that the apple doesn't fall too far from a tree. She is the daughter of mega church pastor, best-selling author, and film producer Bishop T.D. Jakes and Mrs. Sarita Jakes, who is also an author, media personality, and business executive. Sarah oversees the women's ministry at the Potter's House of Dallas, Texas, a multicultural, non-denominational church and humanitarian organization led by Bishop T.D. Jakes. Sarah Jakes is also a public speaker in high demand, wowing audiences all over the world. She has been featured in numerous media outlets, including the Associated Press, Essence, Dr. Phil, The Today Show, and WFAA News. Family is very near and dear to Sarah. God has blessed her with 2 children, 3 brothers, and 1 sister. Sarah Jakes.
Good evening. I must admit it is quite a pleasure to be here in Maryland, especially with our First Lady, Trina Jenkins. I like to call her my First Lady, too. When I actually lived here in the DMV area, which before moving to Texas, I didn't realize that there was a DMV area. Like I thought there was DC, Maryland, and then Virginia, and not like all in the same pot. Like you could drive 15 minutes and be in a whole nother state. That's a little foreign to me in Texas. Because you could drive 10 hours in Texas and still be in Texas. Like that's not even a joke. You can really drive 10 hours. And so when I found out that I was going to move to the DC area, I was a little bit nervous because I see DC on the news a lot. And, some of the drivers seem very aggressive, and I'm from the South, so we like to wave at people and stuff. And DC doesn't seem to be waving that much. And then I found out that I was actually going to be living in Virginia, and that I would be able to be with the Jenkins from time to time. And it was so interesting because at the point that God brought myself and my family to Virginia, I was still very much so pretending. And I could not stand to be surrounded by love, because there's something about true love when you're pretending that makes you want to expose your vulnerability. And when you're not ready to expose your vulnerability, love forces you to tell the truth. And so I tried to avoid the Jenkins is what I'm telling you all. I lived about an hour-ish away from here, and in traffic, that could be 2 hours. And so, they would call me sometimes and ask me if I was coming to church and coming to dinner afterwards, and I would be like, well, it's really far, and I got the kids. I was pregnant at the time. I just had my baby. I was like, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to come. But the reality is that I knew that I was so broken that if I was around them, that they would recognize that brokenness and probably tell on me. Probably call their friends and be like, y'all need to come check on your daughter. Something's going on, because I knew I was off. And so I have a bit of a story. I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with my story, but at the time that I was living here in Virginia, it was really when I had the opportunity to come to, I guess, the climax of my journey and really have a serious encounter with God. I was raised in church, much like Jamie, but I can't say that I had the same experience that she had. For me, church, above teaching me about the love of God, I think that because I never really felt churchy, because, I do have on this, so I never really felt churchy. But I never really felt like I fit. And if you've ever heard my sister, if you've ever heard my parents, my sister can get on the microphone and she'll kick her shoes off and hoop and holler all over this place. And my hoop my voice is a little high, and so my hoop doesn't quite, because you got to dig down in there to bring the hoop out. And so my hoop don't really hoop the way it's supposed to. And, I know at the Potter's house, we like to shout really hard, and they don't like those little cute praises that I have. They want you to have a sweat when you get finished. And I tell people all the time that it's not that I don't want to shout, because I really do. I just don't know how to start it. It looks like for real, because sometimes I really want to, but I tell people it's like double dutch, you don't really know when to try to watch your neighbor's feet a little bit. They told me it's 1, 2, 3, kick. And then so I can't shout, so I decided to do a little praise, but I clap fast enough that people can't tell that I'm not on beat. And so for me, really, church taught me how to pretend. Because I didn't really fit, and I didn't really understand why so many people had so much joy and then could go into life. How do you deal with life and have this joy? It didn't really make sense to me, because I had all of these questions and all of these confusions in my head, and I didn't want to shout about it. I wanted to talk about it. How did you get there? Because I think we do a very incredible job of talking about where we are now, but nobody tells us how we got there. And so I thought that I would, I'd have my own little journey, and I would pretend in church on Sunday and then try to figure things out on my own Monday through Saturday. And so as if that wasn't my rhythm and shouting wasn't enough to kind of not make me feel like I fit in. When you're a preacher's kid, everybody wants to know, do you sing? Are you going to be the one that takes over the ministry? And I was like, nah, child, that's not for me. And and so it wasn't until I was 13 and found myself pregnant that I really decided at that point that I knew there was no way possible that God could love me or that I would ever have a place in church. Because I don't know about you, but there are times when you make mistakes, when your life has detours, when you find yourself dealing with the wounds of life, and you come into church where you're hoping that someone could, just give you a little bit of encouragement, and instead they judge you. Sometimes they treat you like you got Ebola a little bit, and they want you to go sit in the back and, don't rub off on anybody because sin is contagious, and if you hanging around her, you're going to do the same thing you did. And so we isolate hurting people, but then tell them that God's love is accessible to them. And I feel like we fail as messengers of God. We do a great job of convicting people. We do an incredible job of shaming people, but it's not many of us that are willing to have a love fest in the middle of someone's mess. And so I did what most of us do when we find ourselves challenged with the wounds of life. I pretended that I was okay, that I had healed and that I would be fine. And, I had my son with me and I was trying to protect him from as much of the judgment as I could. And, I'm going to present this picture-perfect life to God. I'm going to get my life together, and then I'm going to present it to God, and I'm going to tell him, see, I knew I messed up, but look what I did. I fixed it. And so I started working very diligently to fix my mistakes, and I thought that would come by getting an education and falling in love and having this white picket fence, but I didn't think I'd ever have to deal with the infection that the judgment caused, or the infection that the shame caused, or the reasons why I even was that insecure that I ended up pregnant. I didn't want to deal with any of that. I just wanted to get my mask together so that I could come into church and look like everyone else, even though I was hurting on the inside. And so I found myself married, living in the D.C. area with everything that looked great on the outside. Successful husband, beautiful children, but I was hurting on the inside. And my journey to even acquiring this dream led me to know that I was going to be in trouble. But I was so desperate for a mask that I didn't care what I had to go through to get it. See, desperation is a tricky thing because it makes you accept almost anything. And so out of my desperation, I fell in love, but fell in brokenness with someone who was just as broken as I was. You see, there's something about when you start to build your home in your state of brokenness. Before you heal and before you can really grow, you decide to try and fix things. And so you build this home in a place of brokenness, in a state of brokenness. And it should come as no surprise when you live in this broken state that everyone around you is broken too. No more than everyone, for the most part, everyone who lives in Virginia has a Virginia license. If you are living in a state of brokenness, you can only encounter other broken people. And so I found another broken person who I could pour all of this hope into, because if I was honest, I had kind of given up on myself. But I thought, if I take your brokenness and you take my brokenness, maybe we could build something. And so we find ourselves living out of our insecurities and ignoring our strength, ignoring the lessons that our wounds have meant to teach us. Because we don't really have time to learn, because learning would require admitting that we didn't know in the first place. And if we're honest, we have a little bit too much pride to even admit that we didn't have all the answers. And so it wasn't until I started this blog in the middle of one of the most trying times in my marriage that I realized I was trying to create a facade, a mask, a persona for people who had their own mask. Because we only think that people have it all together. We don't know what they go through when they go home. And whether we know it or not, we end up making other people our savior. Please accept me. Please tell me I'm good enough. Please don't talk about me. Please don't judge me. Please don't let your opinions contaminate me, because if you really knew how broken I was, you wouldn't say that about me. So I'm going to create this life that I think you will accept, but I'm really still hurting on the inside, and I don't need you to know that, because I feel like if I expose myself to you, you'll infect me more. How often are we careful with other people's wounds? When God gives us an opportunity, when we see someone in the middle of their brokenness, in the middle of their pain, splashed across the news, how many of us get on Twitter, get on Facebook, and pretend that they aren't people at all and say, well, she probably had that coming because she did this and she did that, as if we pulled up your record, So I wrote my book, Lost and Found, and started from the blog because, I have this blog, and if I'm honest, I'm on the blog complaining because I felt like I did everything they told me to do in church. You have a baby out of wedlock, get married, it's better to marry than to burn. And so you get married to the, whoever is willing to marry you and all of your mess. And you get married, and it's not necessarily who God told you to marry, but it's someone who's a cover-up, and so you're fine with that, and you sit in church, and then you have the audacity to be upset with God because you have created something that you now want him to bless. But I didn't have time to hear that, so I was mad at God, and I was blogging about it. And I was like, Jesus, why did you do this to me? I did what they told me to do in church. I'm married now. I had this baby at a young age. I tried to clean up my life. I tried to go to school. I dropped out of school. I wasn't focused, but still, God, please help me. I was waitressing at a strip club, but God, please, come on, Jesus. I did what I had to do to fix all of that, and I need you to help me now because I have what they told me was supposed to make me happy, but I'm still hurting on the inside. And so I'm living in Virginia. And I've alienated myself from people who could help me because I didn't want to face the fact that I was broken. And I have all of this pride and all of this ego. And I kept having these moments where I couldn't help but be faced with the reality that this dream I had manufactured wasn't God's will for my life. For instance, when I was living in Virginia, my husband and I were putting the children to sleep, and he was upstairs putting our daughter to bed, and I was maybe washing the dishes, and I looked out the window and I saw this car running. And I noticed it was his taillights, because if anyone has been in a relationship where there's been repeated infidelities, you recognize that women are CIA agents on the inside. Your intuition, you just become things you never thought possible. Angelina Jolie has nothing on you. Colombiana has nothing on you. And so I, went into full spy mode, and I was like, I'm going to sneak outside of the house and make my way to the car without my husband hearing me. And so I did it. I snuck outside the house real quiet. You open the door real quiet, close it real quiet. And I walk up to the car, and there's a woman in the car, which I knew there was going to be a woman in the car. And I said, what are you doing with my husband? And she said, we kicking it. And that's when things got a little fuzzy for me. I couldn't really process it fully. It's like, huh? And so before I knew it, I'll just say I didn't know the police can make it that fast to our neighborhood. But Lansdowne police, honestly, they're awesome. Someone should give them a star, because by the time I got finished, I had a police report in Virginia because I had to show out just a little bit because they kept reminding me over and over and over again that this dream that I was trying to hold together for the sake of looking like I had made it to the other side of my struggle was falling apart over and over again. I'm ramming cars like forward, reverse, forward, reverse, forward, reverse over and over again. 3 months later, the girl is pregnant. And due on my birthday. But see, here's the thing. Had I been coming to church and surrounded by love, instead of trying to hide and avoid anyone who would really see inside of me, I wouldn't have felt the need to lose it because I would have known that I wasn't in it by myself. You see, you make a very grave mistake when you make pretending your reality because you start to believe your own lie. And so I've now tricked myself into believing that I'm in it on my own. I can't count on people. I'm certainly not counting on God. And so I have to take measures into my own hands and ram cars and not fight people. What is something you can say in church? Pray fervently with power and laying of hands on people. Whew. It was a glory that swept through here. Y'all didn't feel it. I felt that thing. And so I go home back to Dallas, right? And so I didn't tell my parents at the time what was going on, but I knew that I was in a very bad place. And so I go home to Dallas, and to be honest, I'm still trying to make my marriage work. I don't know if I was trying to make it work because I really believed in my marriage or because I couldn't stand the fact that I would have to face another church mistake. A church mistake. You know, that God's grace is only sufficient for one mess up. One. Don't try him again. He loves you as long as you are doing the right thing. He doesn't love you in your brokenness. He doesn't love you when you're ashamed. He doesn't love you when you mess up. He only loves you when you are acting just like Christ. Forget the fact that Christ came because he knew you were going to mess up and that he knew you were going to need his grace and he knew you were going to come running back. Don't mess up again. And so I had this quarrel on the inside of my mind, and I was wondering, how can I really continue to be in this marriage, even though I know at this point, you know, I'm in danger of being in jail, if I'm being very honest. I was watching Snapped with my mother after this incident. And, you know, my mother's such a sweetheart, God bless her. And we're watching Snapped, and I said, I'm sitting there watching, and she goes, I just don't see how. Have you all ever heard my mother? She likes to whisper. I just don't see how anyone could do that. I was like, girl, listen, you don't even know. You try somebody on the wrong date, it could get real, Ma, like for real. You sweet. It's some people out there. If you aren't careful, you'll do things and call it love, but in the reality, it's codependency. And it's an addiction. It's a Band-Aid over a gunshot wound, but we're so desperate to be in love with the person that we never fully encounter the love of God. And so I spent all of this time thinking the answer to my problem was to get married and fall in love and create this vision of what God called us to be, and, you know, a husband and a wife and this beautiful family, and this is what God wants for our lives. But I never took the time to really recognize that God really wants us to be healed, whole, and in love with him before we can ever fall in love with another person. I was reading Ephesians 5, 1 and 2, and this is the Message version. It says, watch what God does, and then you do it. Like children who learn proper behavior from their parents. Mostly what God does is love you. Keep company with him and learn a life of love. Observe how Christ loved us. His love was not cautious, but extravagant. He didn't love in order to get something from us, but to give everything of himself to us. Love like that. And for me, I can tell you that I was loving cautiously. I wasn't looking for this extravagant love where I could give all of myself. I was looking for a love that would make me feel better about who I was. And love from another person is never going to make you feel better about who you are, because God created you. He's the only one who can help you to see clearly the vision that he has for both your scars and your healing. And you can't love someone fully when you're still broken, because you have yet to really become whole and complete and who God has called you to be. And I think we make this grave mistake when we want to drown in love. We want someone's love. Just drown me in your love. Just drown me in your love. But love really is about having the faith to walk on water. When is the last time your love to someone inspired you to become better? See, because when you have a true encounter with love from God, and you begin to really love yourself in spite of your own scars, in spite of the things that happen to you, in spite of being the victim or victimizing other people, when you really come to terms with all of that can work together for your good, that God needs all of it. I think that we get to tell God, like, here, you can take my degree, but don't take my past. You can take my great family and everything that I was raised with, but you can't take the fact that I was ashamed of myself. And you can have this, but you can't have that. And then we tell God to make a picture out of that. We don't give him the things that make us cry at night. We don't give him the things that hurt us. We don't give him our wounds and our scars and our infections, because we start to believe because people can't accept it, that God can't accept it. But the reality is that we can't love God cautiously, giving him bits and pieces of ourselves. That if we're really going to love him, if we're really going to honor the gift of Christ's life on the cross, that we have to trust grace. We have to trust the fact that we can make mistakes and that we can come back to his feet and say, God, I tried to do it my way. I really did. And I think I messed up beyond my repair. And so I'm turning it over to you. Because somewhere in this whole mess, I made people my master. I made my shame my ruler. And I built my home in this state of brokenness. And at the end of the day, the reason why I'm crying every night isn't because I'm necessarily hurting as much as it is that I'm still hoping. Because if you would really accept it that life couldn't get any better than this, then you wouldn't hurt anymore, because you would really be okay with that. But the fact that you're still hurting, the fact that there's something inside of you that still aches a little bit, means that there's a part of you that's still hoping that you remember that you can heal, that you can become whole, and that your life doesn't have to be about your mistakes. And I believe that we tell ourselves these ugly truths about ourselves as a reminder that we can't become anything beyond this ceiling. You're a teen mom. You're a divorcee. You were molested. You got raped. Love, you don't get to have what they have. You have to settle. You have to change your definition of love to fit who you have become, when the reality is that God doesn't change, because God is love and God doesn't change. And so we don't have to change who God is to meet what we've done. And I think the moment that we begin to fully embrace that we'll recognize the power in being comfortable in our own skin. And recognizing that there are so many different parts in the body of Christ that we don't all have to sound alike and look alike and be alike to still function and to still touch lives. My message isn't for everyone. I go to some churches and they sit on me and they don't clap because they don't want you to talk about anything you did. They don't want you to talk about your past, and they definitely don't want you to come in wearing leather. So, but I'm okay with that, because there is somebody for that audience, and I don't have to punish you for being who you are just because you don't necessarily deliver to me. I think we have to stop making people become who we want them to be and allow God to do the work in their lives. Because the truth is, we're always talking about don't judge me, don't judge me. And a lot of people are saying, that's a cop-out, that's a cop-out. But the reality is that you can't judge someone before you love them. That you may only have one opportunity to touch someone's life. One opportunity to show them who God is. And do you want to show them his conviction, or do you want to show them his love? I tend to believe that if we can love people to the cross, that from there God is capable of convicting them, of changing them. Because we don't know the plans that he has for their lives, and we don't know what he's capable of using, and we don't know what all he needs to make things turn out for their good, and we can't speak on his behalf if we're going to not speak in love. Too many of us are speaking on his behalf and not speaking in love. And then we're wondering why people are hurting and don't want to come to our churches anymore. I think we've done a very great job of laying the foundation of the rules that we've read in the Bible and of all of the judgment that we have read in the Bible that will come upon those who break the rules. But I don't know that we always do an incredible job of having a love fest. And for me, I want to challenge you because I am T.D. Jake's daughter, and I lived in his household for, he's been ministering longer than I've been alive, and I still encountered life. I still encountered life. There's no place where you get this job and you start to make this amount of money and nobody's crazy anymore. Child, they crazy no matter how much money you make. They can still hurt you. You can have a security system and a security detail like Fitzgerald Grant, and they can still come get you. Okay, somebody watch a Scandal. The reality is that you don't make it to this place where life no longer affects you. And because life is guaranteed to give you a blow, whether it's something that you've done and a detour that you've made, or just the regular blows of life that could be cancer or rape or a car accident, you don't know when life is coming for you. And you don't know when life is coming for the person next to you. And so I want to challenge you all, when you leave this place, to walk in love, to love without caution, to not say, I would love you if you didn't dress like that, or I would love you if you didn't look like that, and I would love you if you didn't say that, and if you didn't do what you did in the past. That if you're going to love someone, and that don't mean that you have to be in relationship with someone just because you love them, but you can still bless someone from a distance. Because if we can believe that our prayers can touch someone, if you can pray for me in Maryland and it blesses my life in Texas, that means you could curse me in Maryland and it hurt me in Texas too. So maybe we should learn to keep our mouths off of people. Maybe our struggles come to make us more compassionate towards people. And I don't want us to miss an opportunity to be compassionate because we decided to convict instead. For me, pregnant at 13, had my baby at 14. I graduated at 16. I dropped out of college. I was waitressing at a strip club. I got married at 19, got divorced at 22. Like, my life is ratchet on paper. I love my bio. I have to stand and look at it because I be like, wow, I never thought that would be me. I didn't feel like there was a place for stories like mine, especially being you was T.D. Jake's daughter. How in the world you get in that much trouble? As if like God has grandchildren and I can get in trouble too, But it's the truth though. Like, we all have our something. We do, and I don't have to know what your something is, and you don't have to come up here and tell everyone what your something